Darkness. Chapter 1. Boiled Water. 2006. Joann stood impatiently over the bathroom sink, waiting for the wash basin to fill with water. Her red and swollen eyes were dotting unrelentingly between the running faucet and the white washcloth gripped in the palm of her hand. A single bead of sweat gathered at the corner of her temple, while the tears she'd fought to hold back broke free and cascaded effortlessly down her cherry-tan cheeks. Reneata, Joann's oldest daughter, lay barely conscious on the cold tile floor with her head just inches from the commode's base. Convinced that if she moved 1 inch, she would lose the fleeting breath of life that quietly exited her dying body, she lay still and somber as a buried corpse. "Baby, can you hear me?" Joann cried, straddling her knees over Reneata's upper torso. Intentionally pressing her warm body against Reneata's chest, she wiped the damp cloth across her daughter's brow before grabbing her right arm and wrapping a second layer of bandage around the bleeding gash on her wrist. Reneata could feel the thump of Joann's heartbeat against her chest. She'd never felt its splitting rhythm before. Its pounding quake brought a singe of hope into her heart, awakening her and shining a light on Joann, whom Reneata could now see clearly, more clearly than at any other time in her life. Despite their fragile past, at that moment, the woman straddled over her was no longer a stranger. Instead, she was caring and kind, and not the mother who'd struggled to be good to her and her siblings most of their lives. Intentionally ignoring Reneata's piercing eyes, just as she'd ignored her own image in the bathroom mirror moments before, Joann focused solely on wrapping her daughter's arm with the bandage. Joann was hiding, although her daughter was not fooled. Looking into the face of the woman who gave birth to her 24 years ago, Reneata could no longer escape the truth. She loved her mother the only way she knew how, despite her fears that love was never enough. As calm eased the panic in the room, Reneata felt something wet under her body. Struggling to raise her head for the second time, now less fearful to move than before, she saw a pool of blood next to her bandaged arm and a silver razor blade near her chest. "Oh my God, why did I do this?" she thought. Her fears chased a million things through her mind. But seeing the razor blade on the floor made it clear that she had, indeed, tried to hurt herself. As painful as it was to accept that she'd surrendered to her most horrid fears, she knew what she'd done could not be reversed. It would change everything, her already unstable relationship with her mother and sister, and the life she'd planned with her fiancé Ty, the man she'd opened her heart to despite her own insecurities and doubts. Reneata had desperately wanted everyone in Seaway, the neighborhood she grew up in, to believe that she was strong and unrattled by the mistakes of her past, but now they would know how broken she truly was. She'd never wanted to hurt herself before that day, but the sight of her beloved brother, Ervin, dead in her mother's bedroom, had been too much to handle. She gave in to the darkness, never expecting Joann to be a beacon of light. She was wrong. The universe needed her here. There was more to do. The blaring sounds of multiple sirens startled Joann and Reneata. "Don't move," Joann cautioned before bolting from the bathroom, heading towards the front door. In a heartsick, whispery voice, she cried out, "Why?" as she ran through the narrow hallway. After 12 years of watching her family fall apart, Reneata knew her mother wasn't questioning her. She was, without any doubt, questioning God. They had all questioned him at some point or another. The culmination of their grief had done nothing to change their fate, and the pain of it all was proof that God was not listening. 2 paramedics struggled to get Reneata off the floor of the bathroom. Her long legs could barely bend high enough to allow the paramedics to get a small portion of the gurney in the narrow space. One of the paramedics, a tall but awfully slender white man, who wouldn't stop calling her name, straddled his thin legs over the commode to better situate her body. Placing a small, sturdy board behind her head, he slid her a few inches from the floor so the other paramedic, a short, dark-skinned black woman with a neat, low-cut fade, could get the gurney partially into the room. Reneata could hear and see everything going on around her, but she couldn't say a word. She didn't cry or groan in pain. She just lay there, watching their quick and sudden movements while praying it would all come to an end. When the paramedics rolled her onto the gurney and started towards the front door, Reneata caught a glimpse of Joann outside the bathroom, crying into the arms of a white police officer. He held her with caution, while instructing the other officers with a nod of his head to look for evidence. 3 cops, including an older Asian man in a suit, started looking through the meager, 2-bedroom, 1-story bungalow for clues. It was a crime scene, and someone, possibly one of the 2 living people found in the house, could be held accountable for murder. In a trembling voice, Joann told the officer that Ervin had stumbled to her door just past 10 a.m. that morning, bleeding from his chest, with a large stab wound on his upper thigh. He was scared, appeared to be running from someone, and was begging for her help. In a panic, she swung the screen door open, grabbed her slender 5 feet 10 inches eldest son by his arm, then dragged him to the bedroom before racing to the kitchen to call 911. But just as she picked up the phone, she heard a car pull into the driveway and saw a stocky, young black man dressed in blue jeans and a black jacket run towards the house. She admitted that she did not know him, but she could see a gun protruding from his waist and hear the driver tell the man to find him. Within seconds, he was in her home, hunting for Ervin. Terrified, Joann hid in the small space between her refrigerator and the wall. She admitted to having no courage and being frozen in fear. A stranger was in her home. Her son was badly wounded, and now, because she was unable to protect him, the sound of a single gunshot rang throughout the house, and she heard what no mother would ever want to hear, her child make his final pleas for help. Seconds after the gun went off, the man ran from the house, jumped into the running car, and spun down the street. "I did nothing," she cried out. The cop, Officer Stewart, who was rightfully shaken by her sobering grief, tried to console her with a sterile pat to her shoulder, but the ache in her voice could not be mended. As expected, the next question had to do with Reneata. Officer Stewart, whose voice was so smooth that it made everything he said sound like a public service announcement, politely asked Joann to explain, to the best of her ability, what had happened to her daughter. Why was her daughter barely conscious and bleeding from a wound to her wrist while on the bathroom floor? How could 2 siblings be critically injured in Joann's home? Who hurt her son, and when did her daughter get to the house? The questions spiraled in the air like a tornado funnel. Joann, overtaken by the enormity of it all, took 1 step away from the officer, then began to collapse to the floor. Catching her by the arms, Officer Stewart picked her up without wavering and carried her limp body to the couch. Then he directed a paramedic, with yet another nod of his head, to come to her aid. The truth was, Joann had no clue why Reneata had shown up at her house that morning. She and her daughter hadn't spoken that day. Reneata had recently moved into her own place, a few blocks away, and Joann typically only saw her at Morrison's Bakery, where they both worked a 2 to 10 p.m. shift most days. They'd had no plans to see each other before their shift started. But that didn't stop Reneata from bolting in the door, barefoot and reeking of booze, just after the gunman and his driver sped down the street. Reneata was screaming Ervin's name. She knew something bad had happened, but Joann had no idea how. After the paramedics broke an ammonia inhalant under Joann's nose, she woke, pushed past the policeman, and then ran into the street. Her neighbors crowded the sidewalk, watching as her 2 oldest children were hauled off in separate ambulances. Reneata, strapped to a gurney inside one of the ambulances, caught a glimpse of Joann before the vehicle's doors were shut. Closing her eyes tightly to pray, something she hadn't done in many years, she knew the time had come, and she was in no place to avoid surrendering.